They trusted him. Every single one of them walked into his office broken, desperate, searching for someone to mend the fractures life had carved into them. But instead of healing them, Dr. Adrian Cole turned their pain into his weapon. For years he was celebrated, praised as the miracle therapist, the man who could transform lives. But behind that polished smile and gentle voice, Adrian wasn't saving anyone. He was manipulating them, bending them, shaping them into tools for his own twisted games. And when the truth came out, it wasn't the courts or the police that brought him down, it was the patient he underestimated the most. Her name was Emily Parker. Emily was not like his other clients. She was quiet, timid, broke, just a waitress working double shifts to pay the bills. No power, no connections, nothing special, or so Adrian believed. But from the very first session he wove his web, telling her anger wasn't weakness, it was power, whispering that the people in her life were using her, holding her back, convincing her she was powerless without him. But what Adrian didn't realize was that Emily was writing everything down, every suggestion, every manipulation, every dangerous phrase. She didn't know why she kept the journal, maybe instinct, maybe survival, but in the end it would become his undoing. The first patient to snap was David, a grieving father who came to Adrian after losing custody of his kids. 6 months later, his ex-wife was found stabbed outside her apartment. When the police questioned him, David broke down and admitted he did what Adrian told him. But Adrian was ready. He spun the story, claimed David had delusions, claimed he had tried to warn others. The court believed him. David went to prison and Adrian walked away untouchable, his reputation growing even stronger, and one by one it kept happening. Another client attacked his boss. Another torched a rival's car. Each time Adrian painted himself as the concerned therapist. Each time he escaped untouched. And Emily sat there week after week realizing she was next. Then Adrian made a mistake. He believed Emily was desperate enough to kill. One night he told her her landlord was exploiting her. Wouldn't life be easier if accidents happened? He planted the seed, expecting her to water it with blood. But Emily didn't resist. She nodded, smiled, agreed, and from that moment Adrian thought she was his most loyal creation. He gave her step-by-step instructions, confident she was ready to commit murder in his name. But what he didn't know was that Emily was no pawn. She was the trap. Because while she smiled in his office, she was recording every word. She was copying her journals into multiple notebooks hidden away, and she had gone to the one detective who had always suspected Adrian was dangerous, Sarah Monroe. Together they planned his downfall. On a rainy Thursday night, Emily walked into his office, trembling, clutching her journal. Adrian leaned back in his chair, smug and satisfied. He told her tonight was the night. Tonight she would finally prove her loyalty. But instead of leaving to commit murder, Emily placed a small recorder on his desk and calmly said the words that shattered his illusion of control. "Dr. Cole, this entire session is being monitored." For the first time his mask cracked, his voice faltered, and before he could react, Detective Monroe stepped into the room with 2 officers, the journals, the recordings, the testimonies of other patients. It was all there. The therapist who turned his clients into killers was finally in handcuffs. But just when Emily thought she was safe, a letter arrived. No return address, no name, just one chilling line scrawled across the page in perfect handwriting. "You may have stopped me, but do you really know how many others I've trained?" Emily froze because suddenly she realized Adrian's victims weren't all in prison. Some were still out there, some were still listening, and some were waiting for his command. Evil doesn't always wear a mask or carry a weapon. Sometimes it comes dressed as help. Sometimes it comes smiling, promising to heal you. But true strength isn't found in violence. It's found in refusing to become what they want you to be. Emily thought the nightmare was over, but now she knows Adrian's reach may be far from finished. His army may already be moving, and her fight has only just begun. Emily thought it was over, the monster was in chains, the nightmare buried, but then came the letter, one chilling line that shattered her fragile sense of safety. "You may have stopped me, but do you really know how many others I've trained?" Suddenly she realized Adrian's arrest wasn't the end, it was only the beginning, because if his influence stretched beyond those already caught, then the true danger was still out there, silent, waiting. Detective Monroe tried to reassure her, told her Adrian was locked away, told her the evidence against him was airtight, but Emily couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards made her jump, every unfamiliar face felt like a threat. She began rereading her journals, not just for her own story but for the names, the hints, the fragments of conversations Adrian had dropped, because she realized something terrifying. He had never treated his patients as individuals, he treated them as pieces, moving them across a board only he understood, and the letter proved it. The game wasn't finished. Then the first sign appeared. Emily was closing up the diner late one night when she noticed a man staring through the window, his eyes fixed on her with a blank intensity. When she stepped outside, he was gone, leaving only a folded note on her car windshield. Inside were 3 words, "He still speaks." Her blood ran cold. She gave the note to Monroe, but there were no fingerprints, no leads, nothing. The detective urged her to keep calm, but Emily couldn't ignore the gnawing fear. Someone was carrying Adrian's message. Someone was still loyal. Days later, another letter arrived, this time slid under her apartment door. It contained a sketch, a crude drawing of her, asleep in bed. The caption beneath read, "We see you." Emily's hands shook as she realized someone had been inside, watching her, studying her. Monroe insisted on protective detail, but resources were stretched thin. Adrian's trial was approaching, and the department was buried in legal preparation. Emily was left to feel like prey in her own home. And then, the first attack happened. A car belonging to one of Adrian's former patients exploded in a grocery store parking lot. The victim barely survived, and when investigators searched the wreckage they found a journal eerily similar to Emily's, filled with Adrian's phrases, his commands, his manipulations. It was proof Adrian had planted more seeds, and now they were blooming into chaos. The police scrambled to track down every former client, but the deeper they dug, the more they realized just how many lives Adrian had touched and twisted. Emily felt the walls closing in. Every knock on the door made her flinch. Every shadow stretched too long. She began to understand that Adrian's true legacy wasn't murder, it was control. He had infected minds, rewired them, and his prison cell couldn't stop the voices he had planted, voices that now whispered in the dark. One night, as rain lashed against her windows, Emily awoke to the sound of footsteps inside her apartment. Her heart slammed in her chest. She reached for the phone but froze when she heard it. A voice, calm, steady, familiar, whispering her name. She stepped into the hallway trembling, and there, taped to her mirror, was a single Polaroid photograph of her asleep in that very bed. Scrawled across the bottom in Adrian's unmistakable handwriting were 4 words that stole the breath from her lungs. And that's when Emily realized Adrian's game was far from over, because if he could still command his army from behind bars, if his words still carried power beyond the walls of his prison, then everything she thought she knew about control, about survival, was about to be tested in ways she couldn't imagine. Kindly consider subscribing to the channel for more true crime stories just like this one. Kindly consider subscribing to the channel for more true crime stories just like this one.